All right, correlation 101. Here's the easiest way to show you how to do this. In NHL, let's come down to the research station and let's load it up. The reason correlation matters is because you get points for goals and assists, and typically in hockey, when a goal is scored, the player that passed the puck to him gets the assist, and the player that passed the puck to the player that passed the puck to the goal scorer gets a secondary assist in a lot of cases. And you're going to want those. They're not paramount. Goals mean more than assists, but it is nice to have guys that are always on the ice together at the same time. And that's really the whole key. Let me show you something else first, because this is a better graphic representation. Get to know this website. You can't see it up top, but it's dailyfaceoff.com. This is another one you'll hear a lot of is leftwinglock.com. I tend to go here. I like to look at lineup combinations here because it shows them in a format that shows me kind of what I'm looking at. And so when I'm trying to show you guys correlation, this gets a little bit easier. I'll show you in the research station where to find it just through numbers, but visually with the jerseys somehow help understand that there are 3 skaters on the top line, a center and 2 wings. There's a second line, there's a third line, and a fourth line. We don't usually worry about the fourth line much, maybe on short slates. And they do score goals, but they don't score goals very often. If you're wondering what the red, yellow, green stuff is, it's kind of a player rating, like number 43 rated center, number 135 rated center across the league. Therefore, this guy's not nearly as good as this guy. But you look up here at the top line guys, and you're going to find the higher ratings. You're also going to find the higher DFS prices. But in a team like Boston, these guys are going to be on the ice together. There's a 5-man unit. I mean, even strength in hockey is 5 versus 5, 3 forwards, 2 defensemen. But the lines change interdependently. So those 3 skaters will be out there all the time, but they won't always be out there with that top defensive pairing all of the time because they don't, unless the play stops in a lot of cases, hockey doesn't change their lines in 5-on-5 fashion. They change the 3 forwards and put 3 new forwards out there, but they keep the 2 defensemen on the ice sometimes in order to keep from vacating the ice completely. So those defensemen are going to overlap all of those scoring lines. There's usually only 3 pairs of defensemen, and there's 4 scoring lines, so it's automatically unbalanced. But what you're looking for is guys that are on the ice together. Chara and McAvoy are on the ice together. I can't pronounce his name, but these 2 are on the ice together. Kurt and Carlo are on the ice together. Now, whether or not they factor into your DFS stacks or not tonight is a completely different story. But I'll show you when we get to the numbers how this works out in a second. Just know for now that these 3 are going to be on the ice together all of the time. These 3 are going to be on the ice together all of the time. These 3. When it comes to even strength, when there's not a power play or a penalty kill. And then, I mean, I can't say 100% of the time because sometimes coaches do juggle those lineups to get different chemistry and different things going during the day. But that's the unpredictable stuff. This is the way the game's going to start. This is what we roll with tonight. We have no idea if the coach is going to get a wild hair up his butt and put Marchand down here and trade places with Case for a couple of shifts. We have no idea. It's not likely in Boston, but on other teams it does happen quite a bit, and we just can't predict that stuff, so we don't worry about it. The defensive pairings are the exact same way. They're going to be on the ice together, and most of the time that top defensive pairing is going to be out here with lines 1 and lines 2, so they kind of form a bridge, or they sort of overlap, these guys. So now that you've sort of seen this, and down here there's power play units. It's important to kind of know those too. This would be the first power play unit that gets most of the power play time. Power plays are about 2 minutes, in some cases 4. But in the first 2 minutes of that power play, a lot of times this top line's out there for a minute to even a minute and a half, and these guys come back out and kind of finish off the power play. So they don't get quite as much time, but they do get some time. So these guys correlate. Even when they're not on the same scoring line, they do correlate. Like bad example with Boston because this top 3 forwards is typically on the top power play line too. But let's dive into the research station and let's show you how to read that. If you notice, Marchand, Bergeron, Pastrnak are on line 1, just like I showed you graphically, and they're also on the power play 1. Zdeno Chara and Charlie McAvoy are the defensive 1 pairing. Now, Chara is not on the power play of any kind, and McAvoy's on the power play 2. Down here, these three skaters, this second forward, look at below. Don't look above. This is sometimes a little confusing to people, but look below it. Line 2 is these three guys, Richie, Krejci, and Case. 2 of them serve on the power play too. And Richie doesn't serve on a power play at all. Torrey Krug is a defenseman on the second pairing, and he serves on the power play 1. So if I'm looking at just basic correlation, because we typically focus on the top 2 scoring lines in hockey, we don't use the third line even all that much, especially on bigger slates like this where we've got a lot of options. We don't need to use that third line a whole heck of a lot. If I wanted to correlate, and this is where all of these moving pieces come into play in hockey, I would be focused on line 1 forwards. I'd take 2 or 3 of them. Or I'd be focused on the power play. If I wanted to use line 1, these 3 guys correlate, that's the end of that. If I wanted to use the power play, I could use these 3 guys. I could incorporate Charlie Coyle, or I could incorporate Torrey Krug, because they're all going to share ice time together. When Boston's on the power play, those 5 guys are going to be out there. And what this allows me to do is use a defenseman like a Torrey Krug, who actually gets me some exposure to this second line or this third line as well. Defensemen are sort of the bridge. They bridge the gap between skaters, forwards that are not on the same scoring line. If you had a team like, and this is again not a great team to show you the example of, if I find one that's a little bit more broken up, well, we didn't have to go very far, did we? Is this Tampa Bay? Point, Kucherov, Palat? Okay. So over here in Tampa Bay, we've got the same scoring line up top, right? 1, 2, 3. And we've got the defensive pairing that's mostly going to be with them, but the defensive pairing will also be with these guys, will also be with these guys some. And look down here, I find a power play 1 guy. I find a power play 1 guy on the second line. And I find 2 power play 1 guys on the top line. So if I wanted to, I could run Braden Point, Nikita Kucherov, and Anthony Cirelli, and they are correlated when on a power play. I could get lucky, and Cirelli could score a power play goal that was assisted by Point and Kucherov. That's possible. They correlate in that way. It would be a very unique stack because most people would just focus on these 3 guys. But it doesn't happen as often as these 3 guys do the scoring either, because you don't spend a lot of time on the power play in hockey. You spend most of your time at even strength. But if I'm taking into consideration some of these goofy overlaps, I might come down here, to a Sergachev and run him with a Braden Point, and then I could even come down here and run him with a Cirelli. And I've got Point, Cirelli on different even strength lines, so they're not going to be on the ice together then. They're not going to get the goal and the assist then. They will, however, line up on the power play and possibly get the goal and the assist there. But Sergachev here on defense sort of becomes the bridge between the two, because Sergachev at even strength, well, he will be on the ice with them on the power play, obviously, but at even strength, he will be on the ice with Cirelli some, and he'll be on the ice with Point some. So I've always got 2 guys out there. Then on the power play, sometimes I've got 3. But my 2 guys that I have out there are a defenseman and this guy, or my defenseman and this guy, which actually gives me access to more overall ice time than if I just stuck on these guys. Because if these 3 guys are going to be on the ice or off the ice together pretty much all game long, right? With a defenseman in Sergachev, when he's on the ice, it's likely going to be with one of these 2 guys. So I'm constantly running the opportunity to get the goal and the assist no matter who scores. If it comes off this top line or the second line, I have a couple of pieces of it because I might even have my defenseman out there with them. Does it make sense how it sort of it broadens the scoring net of possibilities? It widens my chances of getting the goal and the assist. Whereas if I just focused right here, it's kind of all or none. They're either all on the ice together or they're not. Whereas by overlapping with a defenseman, I'm kind of out there all the time with access to something. So if this game blows up and I see Tampa Bay scored a goal tonight, I can quickly look at the box score and I can see that the chances are I factored in somehow. Now, I want you to think about what happens when you see a goal scored and you know that you have a wide net cast of scoring opportunities because your skaters are not always on the ice together, but somebody's out there with somebody almost all the time. Does that tend to raise your floor or raise your ceiling? Is it risky to play that wide net game, or is it a little less risky to play that wide net game? Obviously, when my power is not all focused in the same area, on the same three guys that are either all in or all out, it widens my net. It broadens my chances. It raises my floor. That may still come up with a 0 tonight, but the chances are I've got more small pieces of the scoring. I don't have all or none. Anytime you start pushing towards all or none plays, you're increasing your volatility, you're increasing your chances of getting a 0. You're increasing your chances of using a lot of roster spots in your lineup that can wind up destroying your entire lineup because you were too focused in one area. Anytime you're hyper-focused, it is a very boom or bust play. So doing that is great for tournaments in terms of putting all three skaters out there at the same time, these three. But using that defenseman in here with a couple of these other guys is a little bit better for cash games or hybrids. So if you're going to build a lineup that is focused on strength, you're going to focus your power in one area and go all or none. All of Boston won. All of Tampa Bay won. All of Tampa Bay 2. All of the power play won, whatever. But if you can find ways to use these L1s and PP1s or L2s and PP2s or whatever to find guys that are not always on the ice together, but at least a couple of them are almost always on the ice somewhere at some point in time. That's almost a better game, a better cash strategy. That's where some of this stuff goes in hockey. Cash games versus tournaments. Cash games in hockey are a bit of a misnomer because the game is volatile anyway. I don't play a lot of cash games in hockey anymore because the volatility just makes it to where I don't typically score really, really well all the time, and my floor sometimes isn't high enough to really demolish, the 50-50s at over a 50 or 60% clip in order to profit from them. However, because I correlate and I build a little bit more boom or bust type lineups in hockey, my good nights are typically way better than a cash type of night, which means if I cross the 50-50 line, in a double up or a 50-50, and I only get $2 whether I'm in 48th place or 3rd place, and I build a boom or bust lineup that's either going to finish in 75th or 3rd, I need to be in tournaments instead of that cash game, because in the tournaments, that 3rd place out of 100 people is going to pay me more than $2 on the dollar, like it would in a 50-50. So I'm using the contest styles for the volatility of the sport. And I also am going to use the intricacies of the sport to either go for a little bit of safety or go for a little bit of risk when it comes right down to it. These are the things we can talk about. These are the things we can teach you. These are the things that we can show you graphically in this sport to get you up to speed very quickly in building competitive lineups. The question on a big slate like tonight is really just what offenses are you going to focus on? That's what the other video was for. What skaters in those offenses might you focus on, and how does that formulate your stacks? Because if I looked at this offense and saw that Palat and Kucherov were cold, but Point was hot, Hedman was hot, Cernak was cold, Coleman was cold, Cirelli was hot, then I would look at this and go, okay, Cirelli's hot, Point is hot, Hedman's hot. Boom, 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 there's my 3. I'm overlapped on the power play 1. I can use that in GPPs because they're hot, but I could also use that in some cash games because it's a little bit spread out. It raises my floor. Or I could look at it here and say in the last 5 games, 2 goals, 2 goals, 2 goals, top line's hot. I stack that top line, throw that in a tournament. Probably a little too volatile, a little too risky for a cash game to stack that top line. I might take 2 of those guys, not all 3 of them, but if I was in a tournament, by God, I'd take all 3 of them. And I might run them, I wouldn't run them with a Shattenkirk because, see, he's on the power play too. I could. He's going to overlap. He's going to share some ice time with these guys if I wanted to really get lucky. But he's going to correlate more with Palat on the power play 2 than he will these other 2 on the power play 1, because he's going to be on the ice more often with the power play 2 than he is not going to be, or than he is going to be with these power play 1 guys. If that makes sense. If this stuff is starting to make sense to you, then you're going to naturally fit into hockey. If this stuff just completely left you in the dark, don't get intimidated. We all started here. We all learned this game from the ground up. We all had somebody teaching us and guiding us, and that's the beauty of DFS Army. That's the beauty of why you're here. You get to sit in that chat room when you have the time and ask the questions and get the answers and get the videos and get the articles and get the graphics and get the explanation of how this stuff all works until it starts to click. In some cases, it may take a week or 2 or 3 to start clicking. But when it clicks and when you can see these things the way that we will explain them to you, and you can start saying, hey, look at this. These guys look like they're in a good spot tonight. And we start going, yes, you're on it. You got it. You got it. The light bulb clicked. You got it. Once you can take the training wheels off, I promise you, you are likely to have more fun here than you ever thought you could in any other DFS sport, football included. Hockey has so many moving pieces. It is so hard to nail the perfect plays. But when you do, it is so flippin' satisfying and so freaking rewarding that it makes you want to play more and more and more. I'll end with this. If you've ever played golf and you've had a nightmare day, I mean holes 1 through 17, you look like Charles Barkley. You're out there shanking them into the trees and you're scaring birds and wildlife's coming out all over the place running for its life. And you've lost 8 golf balls or whatever, and your buddies are making fun of you and all this kind of junk. And you're just having a miserable day, and it is frustrating, and you cannot figure this game out. And you get to that 18th tee, and finally rip one right down the middle and go straight, perfect, glorious. The swing felt great. Everything felt great. That's usually when the first inclination in your body is to go, holy crap, let's play 36, boys. That was awesome. Trust me, when that happens to you in hockey, because it will, when that happens to you in hockey, you're hooked forever. Glad to see some of you guys trying us out today. Hopefully more people come over and give hockey a shot, because those of us that are in here are passionate about the sport. We love it. We love helping. We love teaching. We love showing you guys how to play. And hopefully this correlation introduction gave you a little bit of insight into building some of your own lineups and getting some suggestions so that you can now interact with the coaches, going back and forth, seeing where they get some of their plays, seeing where you're starting to get some of your own plays, and then hopefully you can really trigger the excitement of learning a new sport in a fun way. And that's what really brings us into the Army and makes us all friends. So, all right, take care, guys. Hopefully you have a good night tonight, and we'll talk to you soon.